Here is your full, high-retention script tailored exactly to your channel's needs. It is written in a natural, gripping American storytelling style with high, emotional stakes to keep viewers hooked till the very last second. Script: my husband let his mother decide everything until I opened one forgotten drawer. The hook: 0 o'clock to 0:45. They say marriage is a partnership between two people. But in my house, it was a dictatorship ruled by a woman who didn't even live with us. For 3 years, I wasn't the wife. I was just the roommate my husband, David, had to ask his mother's permission to sleep next to. Every dinner, every vacation, even the color of our living room couch, Eleanor decided it all. I thought David was just a weak, overly devoted son who couldn't break the umbilical cord. I thought he just needed time to grow a backbone. But I was dead wrong. It wasn't love or loyalty keeping him under her thumb. It was fear. And the terrifying truth about my entire marriage was locked away in a single, dusty drawer in our guest room, a drawer I was never, ever supposed to find. Act 1, the perfect son and the unseen guest. Hi, everyone. I'm Chloe, and to understand how it ended up standing in the middle of a dark room, shaking with a stack of old papers in my hand, you have to understand who David and Eleanor were. When I first met David, I thought he was a breath of fresh air. In a world full of emotionally unavailable men, David was gentle, attentive, and fiercely respectful of the women in his life. He spoke about his mother, Eleanor, with so much reverence. She was a widow who had raised him by herself in a wealthy suburb of Boston, sacrificing everything to put him through business school. I thought, wow, a man who treats his mother like a queen will treat his wife like a princess. If only I knew. The red flags didn't just pop up after the wedding. They practically marched down the aisle with us. Eleanor didn't just help plan our wedding, she took it over. I wanted a small, rustic barn wedding with close friends. Eleanor wanted a grand ballroom event with 200 people I had never met. When I tried to protest, David looked at me with these pleading, puppy dog eyes and whispered, "Please, Chloe, it's just one day, and it means the world to her. Let's just make her happy." I gave in. I told myself it was just a wedding. But that set the pattern for the next 3 years. Once we moved into our suburban colonial house, Eleanor became a permanent fixture in our lives. She had a key, and she used it whenever she pleased. I'd walk downstairs in the morning, wearing nothing but an oversized t-shirt, only to find Eleanor in my kitchen, rearranging my pantry. "Chloe, dear," she'd say, not even looking at me as she moved to coffee mugs. "Cheap ceramics belong on the bottom shelf. And frankly, this brand of coffee you buy is practically poison. David has a sensitive stomach." I brought over the organic blend he's had since he was a teenager. If I snapped back, David would immediately intervene. Not to defend me, but to smooth things over with her. "She's just looking out for us, honey," he'd say later in the bedroom, rubbing my shoulders. "She's lonely. Just let it go." It got to the point where I felt like a ghost in my own life. We couldn't even buy a car without Eleanor approving the safety rating and the color. If she hated a movie, David suddenly found it boring. If she didn't like a dress I wore to a dinner party, David would subtly hint that maybe I should change into something more elegant. I was drowning, trapped in a bizarre three-way marriage where I had no voice. Act 2. The breaking point. The breaking point came right around our 3rd anniversary. I had saved up for months to surprise David with a trip to a secluded cabin in Vermont. No phones, no work, and most importantly, no Eleanor. We desperately needed to reconnect. When I handed him the tickets on a Friday night, his face lit up. For a second, I saw the man I fell in love with. "Chloe, this is incredible." He smiled, kissing my forehead. Just the two of us. But my happiness lasted exactly 12 hours. The next morning, Eleanor came over for breakfast. Within 10 minutes, the cabin trip came up. Eleanor set her teacup down with a loud, deliberate clink. "Vermont? In October? David, absolutely not. The weather is completely unpredictable, and those mountain roads are treacherous. Besides, That's the weekend of your cousin Sarah's baby shower. I already told the family we'd be there. I felt the blood rushing to my ears. Eleanor, I said, my voice tight but controlled. We haven't had a vacation alone in 2 years. The cabin is booked, and David already agreed. Eleanor didn't even look at me. She just stared directly at her son. David, you know how my anxiety gets when you're out in the middle of nowhere without cell service. And family comes first. You know that. I looked at David, praying, begging with my eyes for him to finally say no. To finally choose me, David looked down at his plate, shuffling his fork. Chloe, maybe she's right. The roads can get bad up there. And we really shouldn't miss Sarah's shower. We can always go to Vermont next spring. I stood up so fast my chair scraped loudly against the hardwood floor. I can't do this anymore. I choked out, tears stinging my eyes. I stormed out of the kitchen, drove to a local coffee shop, and sat there for hours, crying into a cold latte. I realized then that I couldn't live like this for the rest of my life. I loved David, but I was married to a shadow. I decided that when I went home, I was going to pack a bag and go stay at my sister's place. I needed space to figure out if this marriage was even salvageable. Act 3, The Forgotten Drawer I. Returned to the house around 4 p.m. David's car wasn't in the driveway. He had likely gone to run errands with his mother too. Apologized for my outburst. The house was dead quiet. I walked up to our master bedroom to grab my suitcase. But then I remembered it was stored in the closet of the guest bedroom down the hall. The guest room was a place we rarely used. It was mostly filled with old furniture Eleanor had dumped on us, including a heavy, dark mahogany antique desk that sat in the corner, covered in a thin layer of dust. As I pulled the suitcase out of the closet, I accidentally bumped into the desk. The jolt caused one of the bottom drawers to pop open slightly. I paused. I had lived in this house for 3 years, and I had never seen that drawer open. In fact, I remember David telling me when we moved in that the desk was a family heirloom from his late father, and the bottom drawer's lock was jammed shut, but it wasn't jammed anymore. The old wood had shifted, and the latch had slipped. Curiosity got the better of me. I wiped my tears, knelt down on the carpet, and pulled the drawer all the way out. Inside, there weren't old tax documents or family photo albums. There was a single, thick, black leather-bound binder, wrapped tightly with a thick rubber band. On top of the binder lay a small, tarnished silver key and a folded piece of heavy cream paper. My heart began to beat a little faster. It felt wrong, like I was stepping into a room I didn't belong in. But the sheer secrecy of it pushed me forward. I picked up the folded paper first and opened it. It was a letter written in elegant, sharp cursive handwriting that I recognized instantly. It was Eleanor's handwriting. The letter was dated exactly 4 years ago, just a few months before David and I got engaged. I began to read, and as my eyes scanned the words, the room around me seemed to turn ice cold. David, I am writing this because you refused to listen to me over the phone. Let me make this entirely clear. Your father's legacy is not something you get to squander on your little romantic delusions. The girl, Chloe, seems sweet, but she comes from nothing. She cannot help you sustain what we have built, nor does she possess the discipline required for this family. If you proceed with marrying her without my explicit oversight, I will be forced to execute the clause. The accountant has already prepared the paperwork. Every single asset, the townhouse in Boston, the investment portfolios, and the trust fund your father left you will be permanently frozen and transferred to my sole foundation. You will be left with nothing but your entry-level salary and whatever debt you've accumulated. You want to play the independent man. Do it on an empty stomach. But if you accept my guidance, if you allow me to ensure this household runs the way it should, your allowance will continue, and the principal balance will be released to you on your 35th birthday. The choice is yours. Choose wisely, son, I gasped, dropping the letter onto the floor. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely breathe. Act 4, the deeper truth. I reached back into the drawer and grabbed the black binder, snapping the rubber band off. I flipped it open. Inside were neat plastic sleeves containing bank statements, asset portfolios, and legal documents. My eyes blurred as I looked at the numbers. David wasn't just a well-off corporate worker. He was the sole heir to a massive shipping fortune left by his grandfather and father, a fortune worth upwards of $15 million. But the catch was explicitly laid out in the legal trust documents signed by his father before his passing. The trust had a behavioral and familial stability clause that gave the primary trustee Eleanor total control over the distribution of the funds until David turned 35, or unless he violated her explicit terms of familial duty. Everything clicked into place with the force of a high-speed train collision. David didn't let his mother run our lives because he was a mama's boy. He did it because he was terrified of being poor. He had grown up wrapped in extreme luxury, and the threat of having it all ripped away had turned him into Eleanor's puppet. Every time he told me to back down, every time he let her change our plans, every time he made me feel like I was the crazy, demanding one, he was doing calculations in his head. He was weighing my happiness against $15 million, and my happiness lost. Every single time. I sat there on the floor of the dusty guest room, surrounded by the evidence of my sham of a marriage. I didn't cry anymore. The sadness was completely gone, replaced by a cold, burning rage. The man I loved had sold my dignity, my comfort, and my peace of mind to his mother for a monthly allowance. And the worst part? He was currently 34. He only had 10 months left until his 35th birthday. He was trying to drag me through the mud for just a few more months so he could collect his prize. Just as I was staring at the documents, I heard the heavy front door click open downstairs. "Chloe?" David's voice echoed through the house, sounding worried. "Honey, are you home? Look, I'm so sorry about earlier. I talked to Mom, and we can compromise on the Vermont trip." His footsteps started coming up the stairs. I didn't scramble to hide the papers. I didn't panic. I calmly stood up, walked to the top of the staircase, holding the black binder in one hand and Eleanor's letter in the other. David reached the top landing, holding a bouquet of grocery store flowers. He took one look at my face, then looked down at the binder in my hand. The color instantly drained from his face. The flowers slipped from his hand, hitting the floor with a soft thud. "Chloe ... double quotes," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Where did you find that?" "The jam drawer," I said, my voice shockingly calm and steady. Funny how old houses shift, isn't it? Kind of like how secrets eventually slip out. David scrambled forward, reaching for the binder, but I took a step back. "Don't touch me, David, and don't even think about lying to me. Chloe, please, let me explain," he begged, his hands trembling. "You don't understand the pressure I was under. My mother, she's manipulative. She threatened to ruin me. I did this for us, Chloe. Once I turn 35, the money is fully mine. She won't have any power over us anymore. We can buy whatever we want, go wherever we want. I just needed to keep the peace for a little longer. For us." I laughed, a bitter, sharp sound that cut through the hallway. "You didn't do this for us. You let your mother humiliate me, gaslight me, and control my life for 3 years so you could stay rich. You let me believe I was crazy for wanting basic boundaries. You sacrificed my mental health for a paycheck. David, I love you." He cried out, tears finally streaming down his face. "Please, Chloe, 10 months. Just give me 10 months. Don't leave me now. If you leave, she wins." She used the divorce to tie up the funds in court forever. I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized I didn't even know the man standing in front of me. He was a stranger who had traded his soul for gold. "I'm not staying for 10 months, David," I said quietly. "But don't worry. I'm not just going to leave quietly either." The next morning, I didn't call a divorce lawyer first. I called Eleanor. I invited her over to the house while David was at work. When she arrived, walking in with her usual arrogant air, she found me sitting at the kitchen island. On the counter sat a neat photocopy of the trust documents and her letter. Eleanor took one look at them, her eyes narrowing. I see you've been snooping. Well, if you think you can blackmail me, Chloe, you're mistaken. I have the best lawyers in New England. You'll leave this marriage with absolutely nothing. I smiled at her. It was the first genuine smile I had worn in years. No, Eleanor, I don't want your money, I said smoothly. But you see, I've already sent the digital scans of these exact documents along with your lovely threatening letter to the board of directors at your precious family foundation. You know, the one that prides itself on ethics, family values, and female empowerment. I wonder what the press will think when they find out the head of the foundation uses financial extortion to control her adult son's marital bed. Eleanor's jaw dropped. The flawless, untouchable mask she had worn for decades completely shattered. She turned pale, clutching her designer handbag like a shield. You wouldn't dare ruin the family name. Try me, I whispered. Here is how this is going to go. David and I are getting divorced. You are going to instruct your accountants to ensure the settlement is fast, quiet, and incredibly generous to me. If I hear one word of protest from you or your lawyers, those documents go public. And as for David, you can keep him. He's all yours. You paid $15 million to keep your son under your thumb. Now you get to live with the spineless coward you created. The divorce was finalized in less than 2 months. Eleanor, terrified of public scandal and the destruction of her social standing, forced her lawyers to give me exactly what I asked for, a substantial settlement that allowed me to buy my own beautiful condo downtown, clear my debts, and start my own graphic design business. David tried to call me a few times, begging for forgiveness, but I blocked his number across everything. Last I heard, he's still living near his mother, waiting for his 35th birthday, but the money won't buy back the 3 years he wasted, or the wife who truly loved him for who he was, not what he was worth. Walking away from that marriage with my head held high was the hardest, but best thing I've ever done. I learned that no amount of money is worth your peace of mind, and sometimes the best way to reclaim your life is to open the drawers you're most afraid of. Wow. What a journey it has been. If Chloe's story gave you goosebumps and made you realize how important it is to stand up for yourself, please do me a huge favor. Hit that subscribe button right now, turn on the notification bell, and smash the like button. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next incredible story.